a young boy ran away from home, found himself in the woods, and learnt a valuable lesson. He then came back home, and due to this realization in the woods, later on went on to become one of the 36 doctors of the church. Okay, I know that sounds very convenient and quick. You must be thinking, what exactly happened here? Well, keep that thought in mind. Hi dosto, Anson Andrews is in the house, and I hope you are all staying awesome. I am super happy to be here and welcome you all to today's episode of HiStories Sachi baatein, zero bakwas.
Sachi baatein, zero bakwas.
And now, back to the little boy I mentioned earlier. I am sure you all have questions. Worry not, main hu na. I will answer all your questions one by one. Firstly, where did this boy run off to? To the woods, simply to hide from the world, which was putting way too much pressure on his young mind. But what pushed him to hide? Well, to put it briefly, the boy felt like a failure when compared to his siblings, especially his elder brother, who was also his schoolmaster, had really high expectations and thus was very strict with the boy. Next, what did he really see in the woods which brought him back? Now this is where it gets really interesting. The young boy was sitting next to a particularly worn out stone. He noticed drops falling on the stone, one by one. The boy started thinking, the stone did not have anything to worry about, least of all about these little water drops. But the water drops keep falling, one by one. He imagined the drops not having any effect at first, but that did not prevent the drops from falling. And now, eventually in time, the tiny drops broke through the stone. The stone was now filled with holes. This entire picture was playing through our little boy's head, and I'm sure he marveled and said, "Eureka!" The young boy then went home with this new understanding. He learned that persistence and hard work can overcome any failure, and thus our little boy, who felt he was a disappointment, went on to become one of the 36 doctors of the Catholic Church. Today, we know and remember this young boy as Saint Isidore, Bishop and Doctor of the Catholic Church. But you might say, Anson, life is not always like a stationary stone. Many times it feels like a constant attack and more like a rapid fire round in a quiz. How do we win when it is all so quick? When it's a tough exam you have already failed once, or the kind of test with just too little time to prepare. And the worst situation, what if it's a surprise test? Sometimes hard work alone will not suffice. We could spend hours and days preparing and still not comprehend a single word. Well, fear not, friends. It is at times like these that our next hero, Jehoshaphat, could very likely be the guide you were searching for. Jehoshaphat was a king whose army was led by singers instead of soldiers. Surprised? Well, it gets more interesting. This king relied completely on God and followed his word alone. Curious to know more about him? Well, let's take a quick look at the reign of King Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat was the king of Judah, a good and just king, a servant of the Most High. But he formed alliances with King Ahab of Israel, who persuaded him to wage an ill-timed war against King Aram, a war which they lost at a terrible price, including the life of King Ahab, who died in the battle. King Jehoshaphat himself barely made it out alive, and that was not it. Lo, behold, a frightening army was on its way to attack Judah. What do you think the king should have done? He knew he couldn't fight this battle. He had barely survived the last one. As you all can understand by now, battle was not really Jehoshaphat's forte. At a time like this, he did the one thing he could. He turned to the Lord and said, "We do not know what to do, but our eyes are on you, Lord." The Lord's Spirit informed him that he would guide and fight this battle for them. The king put his complete trust in the Lord and led his army with singers, singing praises to the Lord instead of the soldiers he lost in the earlier battle. A quick note, my dear friends. King Jehoshaphat had many singers in his country. Some say even more than the number of soldiers he had. So he did what he could. He used his singers to glorify God, to gain as much grace as they could in that difficult time. He gave his 110%, and at that instant, the Lord acted. He made the enemy troops fight amongst themselves. By the time Jehoshaphat arrived with his army of singers to the battlefield, all they could see were their enemies lying dead. All they could do was carry the wealth of their fallen enemy back to their kingdom. What a wonderful story! How I wish the Lord would fight all my battles for me. Knowing myself, this would make me the recipient of the award for, yes, that's right, the laziest person on this planet. Well, jokes apart, remember, dear friends, there are some battles we fight with hard work and persistence, and then there are some other battles which we need to fight with prayer. Make no mistake, God acts only when we take the effort. All you need to know right now is that failure is not final, is not fatal. It just needs a little grafort. Yeah? You heard me right. GRAFFORT. Grace plus effort is the formula for success. Grace from God plus an honest effort from you. Let the words of the psalmist echo in our hearts. The Lord upholds all who are falling and raises up all who bow down. So, dear friends, I hope you all had a superb time and took something away from today's episode. If you really enjoyed it, please do share it with your friends and family. This is Anson Andrews signing off. Stay tuned for the next episode of HiStories, Sachi baatein, zero bakwas.